On today's episode, we get to talk to Dr. Anthony Dunnigan, who is the Vice President and Chief Medical Information Officer of Valleywise Health in Maricopa County, Arizona. So, Dr. Anthony, welcome to the show today.
Brandon, thanks so much for having me.
Great. So, you were a practicing physician for many years, and then you moved into informatics. And you have a degree in biomedical informatics, which is my degree as well. So, this is awesome. We get to talk, nerd out on informatics stuff. But I'm curious, how did you make that transition, and why did you make that transition from being a physician into more of the informatics space?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I know no two of us have gotten here the same way in these roles.
True.
I was in the right place at the right time. I was a young resident at the VA when they turned on CPRS back before most people knew what EMR stood for. So I was one of the guys who would be on call, doing internal medicine call late at night and playing around with, just enough mumps code to be a little dangerous and pulling in a vital sign into my note. And I was like, this is amazing. And plus people can read my notes, they don't have to read my scrawl, and they can read it from anywhere. So I was pretty passionate about the power of, that very early technology at a early stage in my career, sort of a bit before it became a field. And of course now we have board certification and everything. So that really lit the fire for me. And I've had opportunities to kind of deepen my knowledge and get into various technology implementations, and it's led me to where I am today.
Were you already kind of a computer nerd before you started tinkering with mumps and the VA EMR?
I would say so. In college, I was a demonstrator of the Apple Newton, which, if people remember that, it's a long ago predecessor to the iPhone. I think I sold one of them in a year and a half. But I would sit there, while trying to pull people in, and it had very basic handwriting recognition and things like that. Yeah. So I've always been a little bit of a geek for sure.
Right. And that's what it takes. The joke is that I have a background in genetics and then informatics. And so the joke is that I'm both a geek and a nerd. And that's I think that a lot of us in informatics can say that as well.
I can appreciate that.
Right. Now, do you still see patients today, or are you truly focused on the IT side of things?
I do. It keeps me honest and humble. I work with the internal medicine residents, so I get in there and use our EMR and teach them. Really, probably my strength is teaching the young learners, students and residents how to use technology, whether it's voice recognition stuff or telehealth, or basic EMR tutelage. They get some of that now in medical school. Which is great. I'm seeing people now come through fairly adept at basic EMR use. So it's fun to now kind of get them up to the next level with some of these tools.
Right. They're all trained on using Facebook and Snapchat. And so getting them to document stuff in EHR is not that much more to do.
Indeed.
Right. So, what are some of the biggest challenges you face as a chief medical information officer with regards to managing data or connecting with patients that you struggle and face every day?
Well, it's funny. Some of the challenges remain over a decade and a half where I've been involved with technology and informatics. I'd say we have a very good tolerance of the EMR. And the EMR vendors have worked hard on usability. I've talked to human factor engineers that work at some of the vendors, and they're trying to make it easier, reduce clicks, reduce scrolling, and I'm very thankful to that. And those, when they roll out those upgrades, they play very well. But I'd say basic usability remains a concern. We've spun up an efficiency program. We're trying to get people out the door and get them home. To be with their families and not turn their computer on at 10 o'clock at night and finish charting. And so, tools that allow
so
them
it's
to do that.
Efficiency for the providers and documentation and stuff.
That remains near the top of the list. If you look at physician burnout, which is of course a huge problem and has only intensified during the pandemic, 3 of the 4 top causes of burnout are technology related. So we try to address those.
Tell us a little bit about Valleywise Health and the patients and the population that you care for.
The Valley's huge. So if you've been to Phoenix and Maricopa County, it's an hour across the Valley in any direction. So we've got a very diverse population. It's a safety net system. We essentially take all comers. Medicaid is a large book of our business. I'd say upwards to 60%. We have a lot of patients that are cash paying without insurance. A smaller book of business of Medicare and private insurance. A very diverse population. Many patients whose first language is not English. We have a lot of refugees in the Valley. So it's an amazing environment. It's an incredible mission. It's a great teaching hospital. I've been passionate for years about getting technology in the hands of patients, even with all those caveats, right? So things like the patient portal, the personal health record. Right. And this was another one. And in those first days where we were spinning this up, we were very cognizant of how are our patients going to use this technology? How are we going to make it work for them? It's got to be simple. It's got to be simple for the providers too, on both ends. And, there's obviously going to have to be some facilitation and warm communication there.
Right. So let's talk about your involvement and introduction to telehealth. Had you been doing telehealth previous to COVID, or is this something that came more recent for you?
Yeah, we had been discussing telehealth for years. We certainly, as a county safety net health system, and other parts of Arizona are massive without specialty care. So the benefits of telehealth in the state are huge. Up north in northern Arizona, the Flagstaff area, which is actually the second largest county in the U.S. by land, they've been a leader in telehealth for 20 years. So we've been trying to get this off the ground. I think probably our early thinking was it was a fairly heavy-handed, heavy technology play. We've been trying to figure out the middleware piece. How do you connect one system to another? And so we'd had a lot of those conversations for years and years, and had been working to spin up some pilots, and I'd say we were sort of dabbling in it.
Right. And then COVID hit, and that's what really prompted you to, all right, we got to really figure this out and do something. What was that experience like?
I've never seen anything like it in my entire career. It literally changed overnight. Everything changed. In fact, I'll never forget, it was March 17th, 2020. It was St. Patrick's Day when the Office of Civil Rights sent out that now infamous memo basically saying, hey, you can use telehealth. You can use just about anything. You can FaceTime, you can Skype, Facebook Messenger, and
just whatever,
it's all
just
good.
Do it.
Whatever you have.
Yeah.
There were a few things they actually specified you shouldn't use, like TikTok. They actually called that out.
Right.
But it was pretty much all fair game, and you were going to get full per diem for a typical E&M level office visit, and that literally changed. The business rules changing overnight really lit the whole thing on fire. In that same memo, there were a short list of sort of semi-sanctioned applications. Doxy, of course, was one of them.
Right.
And so that within, I'd say, a matter of 4 to 6 hours that day, we had a shell of a pilot in place.
Oh, that's amazing. And that's a big thing, because a lot of the hesitation pre-COVID was, is this complicated to use? Got to make sure stuff is HIPAA compliant. But also, we're going to do all this work and have this huge capital investment to have this expensive telemedicine system, and then we're not even sure we're going to get paid for it. So there's just high levels of barrier entry, little amount of rewards for a lot of the larger health systems. And overnight, that flipped like this. Easier to get in, just do whatever you can use, and you will get paid for it. And now the economics of it completely changed overnight.
That's exactly right. I always think of it as a three-legged stool. Technology, operations, and business. We had most, if not all, of the technology.
Right.
The business rules, as you say, were very cumbersome, convoluted, hard to understand. There's various codes. Some of the codes were open, some weren't. Medicare, Medicaid, private payers all had a different take. And then, honestly, we didn't have a huge operational pull. There was a lot of interest and sort of some pet projects, I'd say. But suddenly, overnight, the business side became dramatically simplified. And we had a huge operational pull. Those first 24 to 48 hours, we had a desperate need to deliver care to people in their homes, keep people with chronic conditions, but well out of the system, and have that capacity for patients that had symptoms out there and were concerned about COVID. So it was really an immediate congruence of those three things.
So as you were rolling out telemedicine to your organization, what was that experience like?
Yeah, those first few days, we got a few people doing pilots of the platform. I tried to pick people in various spaces, some ambulatory docs, primary care, specialty care. We looked at a few use cases on the inpatient side, and the experience was incredibly positive. And in fact, it's one of those rare times in my career where word of mouth was so strong that we had people asking why I didn't include them in the pilot. 48 hours after getting a few people in. So and I think it was smart to bring to have a various set of folks, family doc, internal med, pediatrician, OB clinic, some of the surgical subspecialties. So I think of that 16% principle. You've probably heard that. If you can get 16% of folks engaged in something and to buy in, you'll sort of get that inflection curve going in the right way. So the ramp up was incredible. I've got a graph of it. I've never seen anything like it in my career. I mean, and to think a year and a half later, going from 0 to 250,000 visits. Obviously, we've now got a steady state going, but first, I'd say 4 to 6 weeks. As a CMIO, it's an adoption curve I dream about.
Oh yeah, I bet. We can relate. So how satisfied are your patients and providers in this change and movement into telehealth?
We were concerned about that. As a technology we've been trying to get off the ground for years, obviously. We wanted it to work well, ideally on day one, or certainly the first few months. We actually did a very early survey back when we were utilizing the free version of Doxy. So this was April of 2020. So we surveyed patients and we surveyed providers with the help of our marketing department. And even using the free version, a lot of providers were still using their own phones. The patients were using whatever they had at their initial disposal in their homes. The satisfaction was very high. And one of the questions we love to ask is, when the pandemic ends, would you like to continue using this technology? And it was like 90% yes. I mean, again, just numbers I don't see. We ask people, we do surveys as part of our efficiency program about EMR usage and other things, and you don't see those numbers. So we knew we were heading in the right direction very early with both our patients and our providers.
As you were looking at considering your patient population and who you were serving, and looking at the available technologies, what is it that factored into your decision making? Yeah,
we had, we've got video conferencing tools. We've got the ability to communicate through certain means. We looked at a couple of those things that we had. Honestly, they were just very cumbersome. There's an administrative burden. Part of my job is to work with my colleagues and other employees and get those things working. And that's work, and that's our staff, and that's my physician colleagues. So we gave that a fairly quick thumbs down. We really started looking for a technology that was going to be very simple to use, very intuitive, that would need very little training, highly scalable, that took almost no thinking to get off the ground. And so we started looking at a few of those technologies, and of course we looked at Doxy, and it sort of checked all the boxes. And that's that principle, that concept has remained very true today. As we've iterated things and gotten more strategic, kind of coming out of the tactical place into a more strategic place. Right. That principle is still as important today as it was back in March of 2020.
And it sounds like simplicity is an underlying thread through everything you're looking at. So when you're looking at EHRs, how do we simplify that? And you appreciate and you value that usability aspect. That was a decision factor in your telemedicine app. It sounds like those are the things that you are that are important to you, that you value the most?
Absolutely. You think how complicated the EMR is, right? I mean, it's a common analogy is the cockpit of a 747. And in the past,
Right.
we've looked at, how do you bring in middleware and integrate it into the EMR? And there's, of course, ways you can do that. And there's apps out there and all that. With the time we had, we didn't worry about any of that. So we brought along a platform to stand alongside the EMR. We didn't touch anything in the EMR. The documentation, the scheduling, all the billing components, we left that as is and stood this up right alongside it. And I think that really allowed us to get this going quickly and scale very rapidly, to be honest.
What are some of the challenges in usability that you and your organization are facing today that you're looking to fix or address or to simplify even more?
Yeah, I think of that on two fronts. So on the healthcare side, there's so much technology in play. It's not just the EMR, right? There's phone tools and other business applications. So I think, and it's perfect for somebody who manages a team of informaticians, right? I don't think we've ever better understood informatics like we do today. When my parents ask me, so what the heck is this informatics thing you do? I think people get it now, right? It's pairing technology with workflows and just making things flow in a way where you don't have to have 5 neurons fire to make something work. You can dedicate that brain power to healthcare. So, and then the flip side of that coin is the patient experience. We certainly had a good glimpse of that as we really pushed to get the personal health record more widely adopted, and we had success there. But as we promoted this and found the devices that the patients had either in their homes or in their hands and got this working, it was that experience all over again. And you hear the term digital divide, right? So we're very cognizant of what our patients have, what their bandwidth is, what their technical maturity and capabilities are, and we really cater to that. And it's a wide spectrum. I mean, I'm often surprised. We've got homeless patients that are very savvy with smartphones. We try not to make any assumptions, when people come in the door or when we're talking to them on the phone.
I'd like to dive in a little bit more on this. So what are the patient challenges that you've seen in rolling out telemedicine and other technologies to patients?
I think back to when we first started buying airline tickets online, or you'd go up to a kiosk and you remember the first couple times you're like, I just don't trust this thing. I'm going to go up to the gate and talk to somebody. And then there was a day where the person at the gate said, this would be a lot easier for you if you just use this kiosk over here or did it online. I think that's where we're at with telehealth, right? So it's really getting through those first couple visits. And it's not just on the patient side, it's on the provider side too. So I told all of my colleagues, and I still do, look, just get this thing up and running. You've got a lot of people here to help facilitate the experience. By the time you're 2 or 3 calls in, you'll be a pro. And by and large, it's true. Once you get the camera working and you get the settings configured right, people are just rocking it, both providers and patients. So, but you had to get through those first. I call it faith, right? Once you believe it'll work and you can rely on it, now we're off and running. So.
Right. Yeah, you got to take that leap of faith, and once you show that you can do it, all right, I got this. And
it actually does work. Wow, this is great.
Yeah. And how do you see the attitudes towards telemedicine and technology change as doctors and patients get more used to this?
It was part of that perfect storm because there was such a pull, and people were, quite frankly, desperate to get this technology working right away. And to have it work and be, everything I hoped it would be efficient and easy and on both sides, you have these 1 to 2 weeks in, we have these rich stories about, providers looking into the homes of family members and they're looking into what's in their fridges and meeting family members.
Yeah.
So the satisfaction was huge early. And so we've really just tried to leverage all that. So, the work over the last year and a half has been largely, how do we take advantage of this? We know it's never going away. How do we continue to be better telefacilitators? How do we leverage telehealth and coordinate that more tightly with in-person care. There's things you need to come in for. You need to come in for shots and certain cancer screenings and pick up your meds and get your labs done. So what's the right balance there? And that differs across every service line. But we've really rode that early wave of satisfaction to get to a pretty savvy place now, which just is remarkable.
Well, let's talk about that because, before COVID, most of the healthcare industry was over on this other side, not using telemedicine at all. COVID hit, swung to the other side, and they were almost doing all exclusively telemedicine. And now it's kind of coming back. And what is that final resting point going to be? What is healthcare going to look like what is the new normal of healthcare?
It's a great question. And I think, by and large, 25, 30, 35%, we know a significant bulk of business is just perfect for telehealth. Certain follow-up visits, check-ins. We've swung that ratio quite dramatically over the last year and a half. Here in the Phoenix area, we've had a couple of these horrible waves. And of course, people saw that on the news. So, we swung it back up to 50, 60% at times. We think somewhere when needed. Yeah, purposefully.
Right.
We think somewhere between 25 and 35% is probably the sweet spot. Again, it'll differ by service line. I mean, there's services where you come in, you get a thorough in-person visit with certain things, and you could probably have 2 or 3 telehealth visits after that. So a lot of our strategic work that's ongoing is to really find that sweet spot.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the challenges that you foresee in the future in adapting to this new normal that still need to be overcome and addressed?
Yeah, I'll tell you, we're aware that screening rates are down, immunization rates are down. So we talked about trying to find the ideal way to connect telehealth and in-person care. We're still working on that, as I know everybody is. So we're getting a little bit more structured around which type of visits we promote in person, which are ideal for telehealth. That's a huge piece of that strategic work. The telefacilitation continues to mature. Things like translators, so a lot of our visits will require a translator. We've now got a nice system in place where the translator can get on Doxy as part of a group visit. We're working with our third-party vendors that help us with translation to be able to do some of that as well. And then, the rules continue to change. We're working really closely with the governor's office here in Arizona to understand sort of where that vector is going. Does the patient need to be in state? Does the provider need to be in state? Some of those ramifications. So I think there's a lot of that work ahead. And then probably the biggest thing is ensuring that, this incredible new mode of care that we feel will never go away, making sure we match that to quality. And we're doing some research, and there's a lot of research nationally now on exactly that. How do we take advantage of this technology, pair it in the right way with in-person care, and follow metrics? To me, this promotes satisfaction, this promotes engagement. I think we'll see higher quality because of that. I think those are, diabetes care, blood pressure control. I think of a whole host of metrics that sort of equate to engagement. I mean, this is an engagement platform, and it's an incredible one. So I think we'll see that bear out. I suspect it'll be probably another year or 2 before we see that.
Right. Really, the key word there is engagement. So, how well are patients engaged? And, some patients, now that they've tasted the convenience of telemedicine, are going to question, do I really need to come into the in-person clinic for this? And we've heard stories of patients just not going to in-person visits because it's just too hard to take time off work, to travel, especially if they don't have a vehicle, or to take a bus or whatever. But the ability just to have the ability to see a provider by video increases that access and engagement with that patient that they otherwise would have skipped because it was too complicated.
Absolutely. That's a crucial part of this. And it's our job to help patients navigate, right? I mean, I tell folks all the time, coming in person and navigating our healthcare system is not easy. I mean, I get lost on campus. And so, we love the notion of telehealth as being an easier way to get care. It takes some navigation though. And so when folks call, we're working really closely with our patient access center to be able to offer them the right type of visit for the right thing. Mm-hmm. I was trying to get my son into a dermatologist, and they were like, "Do you think this could be done via telehealth?" I'm like, "Heck yeah! I've got a nice
Awesome.
camera here."
Yeah.
So I'm in the same boat, So that's a crucial point though on engagement.
How has your perspective of healthcare changed through this experience?
Well, great question. This is probably the perfect example, and it's a lot of what I talk about with our senior executives, and I've given quite a number of talks. It comes back to that alignment. When we finally had alignment of a technology with an operational drive, with a clear business layer, mm-hmm. it was just a home run. So, we're starting to look at some other things now. Another thing we've been trying to get off the ground for a while are e-consults, the interprofessional consults. I might see you in my primary care clinic and refer you to a derm doctor without you even seeing the derm doctor. You get a asynchronous consult. There's a huge role for that. And again, finally, we have some alignment and we've got a clearer business understanding. A lot of the extended care team, I think of care coordinators, case managers, other folks doing population health work, the team that surrounds the provider. Some of that's become clear and more aligned as we've been through this pandemic. So, I talk a lot to my operational folks, and sometimes I take the technology out of things. And it's just, what are we trying to do? What's the business model for it? How do we scale it? This has been, in some ways, a blueprint for that.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love to hear those things. Well, Dr. Anthony Dunnigan, thank you so much for your time today.
Brandon, thank you. It's a privilege to be able to share some of our story. Great talking to you.
Appreciate it.